Bang, bang, bang. The one and only Nordista Freeze. What's kicking, player? Thanks for coming on today. Where are you at in the world right now?
Dude, no problem. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm coming to you from my home. I live Nashville, Tennessee in the 12th South neighborhood.
Very nice. When'd you get back to Nashville?
It was a little over a week ago. I got back in from, I guess, most recently playing over in Europe. I don't. My last show was in Leipzig, Germany.
Very nice. Was that your first European tour?
It was, yes. I've done so a year ago today. I'd never left the country to do music, but yeah, now I've gotten to do UK, and then this is my first like EU, like going through all the countries and stuff.
Very nice, man. Did they seem prepared at all for your live show, or did you take the world by storm over there?
Um, I appreciate the way you phrase that. Let's see. I've been told that the European crowds would be a little bit more wild, or maybe a little bit more ready for it, and I did not find that to be true. I found them to be just as pretty much the same. I'd say the more Eastern Europe I got, maybe people were a little bit more down for a crazy show, like in Prague, especially. We had a really wild show. So
Yeah. Well, I think
yeah,
for as approachable as a human being you are, you bring a level of rambunctiousness that no one really sees coming until you're hanging from the rafters and they're starting to comprehend what's going on in the room. Uh, and like, how long, how long did it take in your musical career to find out that that's who you are on stage, to ignite that character and to be the Nordista Freeze that you know to be now?
that's a good question because I do think that I've played about 820 shows. Before that, I had a band in high school. We played probably over 200 shows, and but I remember from the very start with that band, like being pretty high energy frontman and running around work doing crowd work and stuff. So it does feel a little bit like I was even then I was like ready for it. It was something that whether it was nature or nurture from watching my older brother perform or my dad, they don't perform as well.
Well, I
Yeah.
think you kind of incubate what's gonna be your shtick, and once you get so good at it, it stops being a shtick and just starts to be your live performance. So, like, how many of the things that make up your live show are premeditated versus I scan the room and I take off? Emotionally, you just end up where you end up.
Right. Well, that's a good question because I feel like, when you're on a tour, I know you know what I'm talking about. It's like, let's say if you're doing a tour that's like 2 weeks or longer, by the end of it, your band like sounds completely different. And if you record it every night, you can maybe slowly like dissect what makes it go from A to Z. But somewhere along the way, you guys just get tighter and you know how to play things differently. And like certain riffs have become like a part of the song or this or that. And it's like, I don't know. It's kind of amazing how it works. So it's like, to answer your question, I don't, in some ways, I might do the exact same thing every night, but it's also not necessarily premeditated. It's like just from coming across that same experience over and over and being like, what do I do at this turn? What do I do when this bridge hits? And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I guess you feel like that worked last night and I'm going to kind of go that same route or try something new. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's hard to say whether it's definite or not. You get in the moment, you kind of have your bag that you can pull into and say whether this crowd's going to interact with, you going off stage in this moment, or if this is a I will dance in front of you to kind of like one of the things I love most about seeing clips of your show because unfortunately I missed that show in Brooklyn that we were talking about. And that was going to be my first
Oh,
Nordista chance.
yeah.
I was very excited to finally get to experience it, but at some point we'll get you to Cincinnati so I can fully embrace what this thing is. But
Please.
you try to give people permission to take part in your show the way that you take part in your show. And that is full exertion when you watch someone like yourself. Like break a sweat, let's dance a little bit. Let's have a wild time because if you walk away from this saying I didn't get it, it's because you didn't do it. You didn't get
Right.
involved in that kind of a way.
Right.
Um
Yeah. That's
As
totally
as
true.
as you've built your catalog around your show, how much of this material is already available for people to listen to online versus things like today where I saw you post a new song clip. I listened to it, it sounds beautiful, but there's still the elements of teach a band, put it in the show, work it into is it an opener, is it a middle? How do we kind of do that?
Right. Yeah, that's so true. I'm trying to put out 5 records in the next like calendar year, like the next 365 days. So I'm trying to put out a lot of new music. Then I've got a lot of old music out there as well, probably like 12 to 15 albums up on different streaming like Bandcamp and all that. So
Yeah. And do you prefer going just the Bandcamp route?
that's also a good question. I am at this point, I feel like I am open to doing whatever. I will do anything. I'll post my videos on Snapchat. I'll post my music on all streaming. I'm very like just trying to get it all out there. However, people use anything,
Yeah.
I'm open
Well,
to it.
it's hard to feel loyalty to one platform or the other at this point when everyone's just trying to figure out where is my value proposition most understood. And it
Right.
seems like for you that's the live show. So how do we put butts in seats to really take this thing in?
Yeah, yeah, I do, and I love touring. So I think ultimately, although also love making records, I do think going on a tour and selling tickets is maybe the ultimate goal, or just getting the opportunity to play. And the more I can do that independently and financially take care of myself, that's great. You know.
Yeah. I think you just put it out there what needs to be done to make those things happen. Like one of the things that you do great, my friend, is making people feel like through a phone screen that they know you. And for a lot of people, that's years of practice and getting to know it. But for you, it seems like it's been rather natural to be transparent through that mechanism. Is that
Hmm.
something you put a lot of effort into, or is it just turns out you're good at it?
That is a great question. Maybe there's some natural ability there, but I also have been promoting my music or of one form or the other since probably 2010. I think 2010 would have been when I put out my first record. So I guess just 14 years of using different platforms. Like back then, it was all Facebook, just posting on my Facebook page and messaging people on there. And yeah, just trying to connect with people. And now I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, maybe there's a sense of adaptability where if somebody tells me, oh, we're actually all doing this now, I try not to approach it like, oh man, like some sort of new language or app I have to understand. It's like, well, okay, like it's ever changing. So
Yeah,
I'm
and that'll
down.
be how you do it. So you talk
Right.
about messaging people. Is a lot of your approach based on the individual?
Yeah, I would say so. I am very interactive and very responsive online. And I mean, I think my perspective is if I can be, then why not be? And if somebody is nasty to me or like I think some people fear certain boundaries being crossed, and it's like you just have to be willing to know yourself and know, I can communicate with people in these ways and protect myself in other ways. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I try to be as friendly as I can and yeah,
but and
respond
that
to
comes
stuff.
across well, man. Like how do you decompress about coming back from a tour where you're 100% dependent on the kindness of people around you to navigate a country where you don't speak the language, you don't necessarily have a friend group that you can lean on, and then it's like, "Oh, I've arrived home and it's familiar."
Right. Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. And I feel like in that sense, it's like those people have helped me do something so special to me that I do feel not that I owe people something, but I do want to show my appreciation however I can. To just get back to your last question on like interacting with fans or friends and etc. But yeah, it is also just nice to be home. It feels so. It took me a minute. The post tour like blues or depression, whatever you want to call it, settled in a little bit uh, harder coming from Europe this time.
yeah. And is that just part of physically rehabilitating from that? Like, it's a very physical show. You put it on night after night, and, as much as I'm sure you'd like to treat yourself like a professional athlete, get the ibuprofen, ice a little bit, stretch out before, by the end of it, it's like you've emptied the tank. So what do you do to kind of mentally and physically recuperate from that?
That is something I'm trying to figure out. Like I've been taking better care of myself, whether through exercise and the food I eat or you know, spiritual, mental ways. Like it's just yeah, because I definitely believe a lot in sustainability. I want to be able to make, and I think the people around me do too. Like all of my friends are making art. None of us are trying to necessarily reach like, I mean, virality is accepted, and you know, like having more of a accelerated success, you know, but we're all working on just uh, sustainability and trying to take care of ourselves and just always push ourselves to make the best art that we can every year. And I really prefer that. It's awesome, and I feel like the people around me are making just like incredible work now after we've all been doing it for 10, 15 years. It's like so cool to see everybody making these just really amazing pieces of art.
Yeah. And for someone that's born and raised Nashville, do you find that the folks that you really interact with are much involved in that kind of sphere of songwriting? Or are they more like yourself, where I would describe you more alternative than most of Nashville, which is Monday through Thursday, we sit in the room, we write songs. Then Thursday to Sunday, we do the variety of county fairs and barroom gigs. It's like you're much more, if we can get the couch out of the living room, we can make this place bump, right?
Right, right, definitely. And it's funny you say that. There's like a unique blend of that here because there are a lot of artists, but even a lot of indie artists do approach things in its own kind of Nashville way. You see a lot more co-writing. You see a lot more like just collaboration in maybe certain ways. I can't really. How do I explain this? But yeah, there's kind of its own Nashville culture to even indie music, but I do consider myself a true outsider. I mean, I love experimental music and experimental performance. So, yeah, I do oftentimes feel maybe a little bit, at worst, isolated, but at best, I like to just embrace it. And you know, I think
Yeah.
I know it's what makes me me, especially in Nashville. And you, I'm sure, feel this way in Cincinnati as well. It's small enough to where I can really feel like I can make a difference and I can do something that no one else in town is doing, which is an exciting place to be, you know?
For sure. And you're constantly surrounded by people that are trying to crack the code. I just find as an outsider from Nashville that's hoping that my own town can take on more life as a musical city, you see a lot of people in bigger scenes approaching the formula before kind of approaching the art and trying to blend something like a conveyor belt operation of making great shit, or just finding yourself in the midst of something excellent and hitting record and then kind of moving on from that. So when it comes to your songwriting approach, is there a formula for how you play catch with that inspiration, or are you just letting it come and go and what you catch is what you catch?
You know, I'm trying to find that balance. I spent years touring so much to where it was hard for me to remain creative in a studio or writing space because I would, and when you're playing like 120 shows a year and need a job to pay your rent, it's like, you know, as you know, it's hard to have that time left. And so now, like this year and last year, I've played a little bit less, and I have been able to, I feel like, refine myself creatively in a way that I definitely had literally like in middle school, like and in high school, like that when you're younger and you have that just creative output and trying to refine that and find a balance where I'm, because I want to be performing. I'd love to play 120, 150 shows every year. Um, but doing it all independently, trying to find that balance, I feel like is constantly pushing me towards new discoveries and new trying to invent or collaborate with my friends on finding new ways to stay creative. A lot of us recently underwent a song a day challenge for an entire month where we had to write at least like a verse chorus for uh, a song for a whole month and stuff like that. You know, can really encourage you. I'm trying to find accountability with my friends where we can all communicate in text message groups and stuff where we can just continue to push each other.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, accountability is such a great way to put it because it is a profession as much as above all things, I believe in the vocation. At some point, you found out that writing songs was not only good for you and yourself, but those songs found their way into someone else's world, and that soundtrack helped better them or helped comfort them or helped propel them into something. And once you see that moment happen, that is that's the chase. You know, like one of the things you're mentioning virality, like virality can be so toxic because a lot of people go viral doing things that they don't love doing. They were just trying to go viral. And suddenly you're hooked on making that thing versus when you strictly follow your own creative juices and your own art and that goes viral. Now there's affirmation to the thing that you love to do. So finding affirmation in the process of, when I have my morning coffee, that's when I spit ideas into a note. And on
Right.
Sundays is when I take the time to actually process and digest what that would be.
Yeah, right. I think that's really cool, and I think the consistency like that can be really helpful, and yeah, you have to in a more algorithmic world, we do kind of have to choose which data we're gonna, use and which we're not, because in certain ways, I talk about this a lot with my friends. It's like in certain ways, I have values or ideals that my art or like a dogma for my art, like these are things that I believe need to come from my heart. That's just my creative artistic spirit. And that can't really be pushed. We all understand what that's like to say, oh, this outside force, this label or this producer or this whatever is trying to like change my art. But in other ways, I have no allegiance or no, I can just totally open my hands and let go of certain things. And if somebody tells me I need to post certain times a day, I'm just like, okay, it doesn't I don't care about that. But if they say, and we need you to do a country cover every single day, it's like, well, I don't know. That doesn't really, so
Yeah.
always finding those lines of like, and I think for me, a lot of times when I'm in the studio, I cannot think about an outside force. But then once I get out of the studio, I'm open to like how we promote it or how we get it out to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think there's something in common between compromise and collaborate, but the Venn diagram pushes me one way or the other about how I feel about it in context. And I think there's something
Right.
particular about Nashville where the scene's developed, that you have folks that have amazing input where the business is their art form and they're great at that. And then you have folks that failed at the art form, so they went into the business, and now you have a bunch of bad ideas in your ear. As we all kind of fight through, like, and I I wouldn't say shame on them for kicking them out there, because if you're just throwing at the dartboard, you might get a bullseye. You might have something brilliant. And I commend folks that love music so much that they want to have something to do with it. But one thing that I've recognized in the last year for myself is being a good listener is as important as being a good artist. So attending a show and paying for a ticket that's meaningful and buying merch from someone that you want to see where that $10 can go in a more intentional way is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you show up and you support somebody, when you think about where that $10 goes, it goes right into the economy of artistry. That artist is probably going to be using it pretty immediately towards something that they need, whether that's buying dinner that night, like literally, or helping their
Broken
career in whatever
windows,
way.
didn't you just have a window shattered in the EU or something?
Yeah, I've got my window out here is broken in my van, and I just like can't get it fixed. So I'm just
Okay,
like,
so right now, tell them where they got to go to buy merch.
you gotta go to my website. Gotta go to my website. I've got merch on there that I need to push better because I need a new window. So
Yeah, it's nordistafreeze.com.
that's right. That's right.
Cool, and when you design merch and you do that kinda thing, like, I told someone the other day, like, I don't wanna feel like TJ fucking Maxx. I don't wanna feel like my main proposition to you is a nice T-shirt, but when you
Right.
buy this T-shirt, this is a bit of the love language where I have commoditized what I feel like my place in your life can be, And if you choose to billboard your chest and tell the world that this was something you took value from enough to not only buy this shirt, but to wear it in public and say this is a part of how I express myself, what a beautiful thing. You just got to
Yeah.
find where you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like how you say it's a love language. I oftentimes on stage will say, my love language is claps of affirmation, and I say, and then people always laugh because it's like words of affirmation is my love language, but if people clap for me while I'm on stage, that is also my love language. So you're talking about buying merch. That is kind of that is a true affirmation, and it carries over in a way, yeah, like you said, to where you can people are willing to like talk about you in their day to day. They might show up to their corporate job or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, like I love Matt Waters. Like, check this out. Like, this guy's
Yeah.
awesome.
And especially when it's something that they've worn for years up until you come back and they get to have that
Hmm.
experience again, then they wear it to the show. Not that they can consciously remember every day they wore it until then, but it's building the anticipation behind why they got it. And that kind of thing does build expectations, which are tough to build upon. But for
Hmm.
folks like you or myself, like I think one of the reasons a solo artist is a solo artist with a band is because there's an acceptance that a lot of our favorite bands fall apart at some point. It's hard to keep certain things moving linear when you have a team of people to move. So when you
Right.
consolidate, you say, "I can skinny up if I need to." It's kind of a promise that the day you wanna come back, Imma be here doing this. The day that you got a
Right.
spot, Imma be there doing this. There I can feel from you a relentless, ambition to fulfill the promise you've given to listeners to be there for them like that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely dedicated to it. And I love going on the road. I want to go back to all the places I've been and play again, man. I want to be on the circuit, like that's what I love to do. And I want to keep putting out music, whether people like it or not. I'm just gonna put out the music I want to make, and I'll
Yeah,
take it out. And if people want to come see me play, I'll give them the best show I possibly can, man. I give everything to it. So,
yeah. Let me take this to a random place. I have my buddy that introduced me to you. His name was Kevin. We went to college together. He says, "Have you ever heard of Freeze Fest? Have you ever heard of Nordista?" And I was like, "No, I've not." So he
interesting.
turned me on to what you do. And
Cool.
one of the the rumors was that you only drink LaCroix, and I thought that was an absurd rumor, but I gotta ask,
There is.
are you a big fan? Is this
um, yeah, I do love sparkling water. I mean, it started because I don't drink, and I just love LaCroix and stuff. I think my favorite is blackberry cucumber is my favorite flavor. I
sounds
love
delectable?
I love blackberry cucumber. But I no longer would say I'm a LaCroix. Like, that's not the primary. I will accept any type of sparkling water.
Yeah.
Um, but
So there's not
I
a
will
deep
drink.
brand loyalty. Okay, cool.
There's no brand loyalty, but I will drink like a six pack if you brought them. I would drink all six of them at a party. I love drinking LaCroix, and I love drinking water. I mean, I'm trying to drink two and a half of these today, so I gotta get on it, man. I try to stay hydrated every day. So.
Yeah. So as a
Mhm.
non-drinker, do you have other vices outside of that, or do you strictly go with water, sparkling waters, a little coffee here and there, or a little tea here and there?
My vices are caffeine. I probably drink like 3 cups of coffee a day. I love sugar, so I'm trying to cut back on sugar, but I love like sweets or like dessert. I love like any type of like cake or and my third would be I love food. Like, I love just eating. So when I'm on tour, it's like I just love getting good food places. So if I can control how much I eat, or not go too crazy, but like my favorite bar food, ideal bar food if I'm at a show, would be if they serve me up some type of like sweet and spicy chicken wings with sweet potato fries. That is a great night for
Dude,
me.
the right sweet potato fries are a different type of sensation that I didn't know I was missing as a child. I don't know if this is a fad that appeared during our teen years,
I
but
know,
they
right?
dominate the needs, like it's getting up there. I've
It is
recently
so good.
I've recently quit drinking, so I'm trying to find the different category of things. I do want to, like, if you're not gonna booze, then you have to hold something sacred to say, like, that's what I'm looking forward to at the end. You know, you can't start off with
Right.
your day with the thing that you're gonna go for. Like, I quickly
Yeah.
found that out with Coca-Cola. I was like, I can be fucking with this before noon. This is gonna be the holy grail if I'm gonna wait, and it's just one because that shit will ruin you from the inside out. It really.
Yeah, yeah, a couple of my other bandmates have stopped drinking, and they really love, like, a Shirley Temple, and it's kinda like that. It's like they will only wanna drink, like, 1 after the show. It's like, "Yo, boss, give me a Shirley Temple."
Dude.
It is kinda nice to, like, reward yourself after, like, a really you're just sweaty and you're, like, hot, and then it's just like, "Man, I'm gonna drink." It is nice to drink something refreshing, and, yeah, it's hard because I feel like if you don't drink, the alternative is always like sugar. It's like a sugary drink, which is fine if you want to drink it, but it's like it's hard to find like how do you find a drink that like is delicious that is not sugary or alcohol? That is the quest.
Yeah, but there has been a turn towards making products that have that same kinda, like the Liquid Death thing. Like, Liquid Death gave me a tall boy to hold in a crowd of people that are drinking, and it feels a little bit more regular to be in that atmosphere. But again, like, you gotta own your reward system at the end of the day, especially when you're on the road. It's like, man, if I was in the van for 6 hours and now I have sound check that I had to wait 4 hours, and then I have a show. Okay, now it's 10 PM. What
Yeah,
have I been looking forward to all day? Because if you binge that because you were bored in the car on the 6 hours, there is nothing but escalation that can happen.
right, right. That's true. That's true. And I don't know. Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, but that is true. You do have to take care of yourself, and I think giving yourself something to look forward to at the end of the day, especially on tour, does go a long way. Because when you hit that end of the night and you're just kind of like, I don't know, that can be a very disorienting time,
Yeah,
and you're like, "What am I doing?" Like the adrenaline, everything like is crashing, and you're like at on some stranger's couch. It's hard to know exactly what to do.
but if you look forward to that thing and you held to it, if you were disciplined enough to say, like, "No, I've been looking forward to this all day," it's like there's such a great conclusion of a good show with that. But, following
Totally,
up
totally.
following up on your gigs, are you someone that spins the show back in your head? Or where does your mind go once it's wrapped up?
You know, I've done tours where we'll capture the audio and then the next day we'll like listen to it. And I feel conflicted on that because it's like I think watching the tape, like to use like a sports metaphor is like really helpful. But at the same time, when I do a show, it can feel so magical and it can be so like demystifying to watch it in this way that's very like unsexy. You're like, oh man, like I didn't actually even sound that good. And I thought the crowd was going crazy. And I'm looking at it now and it's like, it's just like, it can be deflating. So I go back and forth. I think ideally I would like to capture every night and like watch it. If I was on like a bus tour, I would probably do that, if I had ample resources and time. But on a van tour, when you're sleeping on people's couches and stuff, it's like you can only do so much. It's like it's a very exhausting lifestyle. You have to take care of yourself and protect yourself. And I think sometimes trying to convince my band to listen to the show just feels like I don't know if I can ask more of these people that I'm dragging around the country.
Yeah. Well, especially getting them to do the extra homework that you wanna do. It's like I almost prefer to have it on, like, just a board recording that I can pop headphones into and kinda have my own moment, but you need to limit the spiral of, like, what am I here to do? Am I here to make 5 notes that I feel like would improve the show in a great way? Or am I here to mentally talk shit about myself? Because that's not gonna get me anywhere, like, and you need to have boundaries the same way that you do with people about how am I going to digest and utilize this moving forward?
Right.
It can
Right.
take you so many places, man.
Yeah, that's a really good point because if you just take a few steps every day, I mean, by the end of the tour, you're going to have really improved the set and probably fixed a lot of those things you're criticizing or that your inner critic is frustrated with. It'll inherently just get better and adjust
Yeah.
instead of being so critical on yourself. Just be like, okay, it is what it is. Let's just find a few ways to get better. you know.
Yeah, but it is so odd the way that subliminal songwriting happens during a 2 week tour. You know, those little riffs that do become, counter hooks or little sub melodies, what you do. Or I'm sure you've experienced this. Like sometimes lines of lyric change and they fit the context better or worse, but even without thinking about it, your brain just reformulated that sentence so it fit.
Right. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. There's sometimes I'll go back and hear my songs and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't realize I don't sing it like that on the recording because I've like adjusted to a preferential you know, phrasing or phonetic thing." So it's like it's funny in some ways. I've always thought it would be a cool way to record a record if you toured on it for a few weeks before you went into the studio. Obviously, that's like tricky because the fans might not want like 10 to 14 like unreleased songs, but that seems like the best way to like know what's gonna fit, what's gonna feel right, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, you need that time to cook, Like I can't write teach to the band and say this is forever without getting that kind of feedback loop. Like
Yeah,
certain
absolutely.
genres, public speakers would never do that, comedians would never do that, a chef would never do that. You never make the dish for the first time, never feed it to anybody and say that's going in the book.
Right.
So, what's that sweet spot of familiar and non-familiar material?
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's hard to figure out. I mean, maybe you can, in some ways, accomplish it just by practicing a lot with your band, but you do feel like you got to play to people to really understand what lands or what feels right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
and so how much of the current show would be old material versus the new stuff?
We don't play a lot of unreleased music right now. I'm pretty like, I'm at kind of a point where I've embraced that I will play because I've put out a lot of, in the last couple of years, more experimental music that's more progressive or strange. And some of it hasn't performed very well. And I think I don't feel like we're talking about what artistic needs we have. I don't feel a need to like push that music onto people. Like if I put it out there, I know some people hear it and they love it, and I get those messages. And then I know other people, I get their messages that they don't love it, honestly. And it's like, whatever. I'm gonna ultimately pull up my Spotify and play my top 10 songs on streaming. And then I'll add in some other stuff that I want to do. Like I might add in a song or two that I think is a little bit more out there. I don't know how people are going to respond to it because to a certain extent, there is another part of me that's like I want to push people or I want them to see what I'm working towards and even give people something they maybe don't necessarily want because you know you see that I see that with a lot of my heroes. Like Bob Dylan getting up with an electric guitar. People told him not to do that, so obviously there has to be some sort of like, no, actually, I'm going to trust myself over my fans or over. I'm not a democracy. Like I make the rules.
Yeah.
But in turn, I do like I'll play my like top 10 songs on Spotify. Like, sure, if that's the ones people like the most, like it does me. I do not feel at all burdened by the fact that I'm gonna play Wisteria probably every night for the rest of my life. Like if I don't have a record that, just totally blows that out, then I'll play it, sure. You
Yeah.
know?
Bruce Springsteen is I listened to his audiobook, which if you're gonna read that book, listen to the audiobook. It's so much better in Bruce's voice. It's just perfect.
Ah, yes. Okay. That's what I needed to hear because I bought the book and I haven't been able to read it. So
No,
I
fuck
need
that.
to
No,
do the
listen to the
audiobook.
audiobook. It's so good. Uh,
Okay, perfect.
but he has a line about this being the sole leader of what's gonna happen in that show. And sometimes you need that freedom just to make decisions based on what you want as the artist, because what got you here is your own intuition and direction. But as it relates to taking metrics and kinda utilizing them, do you use Spotify to pick out where tour dates are gonna land?
I use it for the analytics of what songs are streaming the most, but I don't necessarily use it for that. I haven't found a direct correlation with that, like that has been effective for me. But also, I was touring before that happened, and I feel like I know my markets better than the internet can really show me. Because my relationships with like certain promoters or venues or like local scenes can be not really as identifiable online. Like I know that I know my top market is like Charleston, South Carolina, Athens, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia. And I don't think that necessarily shows up on a streaming service because there might actually be more people in Chicago that stream my music, but the culture is there. I know that the people will come out for me in certain towns. And so yeah, I prefer to just go off of my relationships and my intuition on that, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful to people to hear because sometimes you try so hard to aim. And in a similar way, it's like you never know when a promoter or a club owner is just going to believe in you enough to pack a room that has never experienced what your show is because they have a level of conviction
Right.
with them. It's like, I can tell you this is going to be worth it, and you just need to trust me. And some folks really formulate that kind of relationship with the folks that come to their shows. And some people, it's just luck of the draw. But what would you say is the most surprising thing about learning those markets and starting to kind of get your foot into touring?
Man, I mean, so the whole thing has been a very organic process for me, even getting across the world now, where you could basically look at it as a radius from Nashville that just has expanded. And, in 2012 to 2015, it was all Nashville. I think I went to like Cookville once. I played one to South Carolina. Then it became like, you know, Memphis is 3 hours east. Or I'm sorry, 3 hours west. Knoxville's 3 hours east. Even, Kentucky, Cincinnati was only 3.5, 4 hours away. Alabama right below me. I mean, Nashville's also just a crazy place to be because you're touching so many states. But then the Southeast and the Midwest and the Northeast and then eventually the West Coast and now, trying to get across the pond and stuff has all just been very organic. It's all been about really like allowing myself to be a part of music communities throughout, now the world. But I really believe in like taking care of the places I go and having good relationships so I can return and, genuinely it's not exploitative, like I want to help them and they want to help me. And mutually, if we can do that, then that's, I think, what makes it sustainable.
Yeah. Well, clearly you have um, a level of depth and reservation for folks that work as hard as you do at this thing, and folks feel that, whether that's your fans or whether it's other artists or these folks that want to put you up in their venues. Um, are there Are there ever any interactions with clubs after you've climbed the rafters and you've burned the stage down where they are totally thrown off the track of who they thought you were? Or most folks pretty understanding at this point, like, no, I watched a couple Instagram reels. I know what this guy's capable of. I know we may need to call the fire department. We're happy to.
Well, that's a great question. I'm shocked how often they don't have any concept of what I do. And even though I feel like it's pretty well advertised and I feel like it's an understood part of who I am, is that I'm a high energy frontman that kind of does like a no rules kind of vibe, running around, running in the crowd. And yeah, I'll get put in situations that are just pretty unbelievable. I mean, I just played at a university, I guess I won't name it, but a university in the South, in South Carolina. And yeah, I like jokingly like took off my boot and just kind of like threw it at the ground, like in front of the stage. They immediately walked up to me, "Hey, if you throw anything else off stage, if you jump off stage one more time, we're gonna rip your check in half." Like they're saying this to me like on stage. I was like, "Yo, what on earth?" And the crowd is like booing them, and it's like I do get put in positions where it's difficult. I have so much respect for the venues, and I want to take such good care of them. At the same time, venues will come up to me and they'll say, "Hey, if you had just told us in advance you were going to do that, we would have preferred that." My response is always like, in my head, is, "Are you like, you really wanted me to tell you all that and me trust that you're going to let me do that?" I almost feel like for their sake and their liability, like they would not want to know until it's already happened. And I can't trust that I can spell it all out and that they'll let me do it. So there is a little bit of like, I hope like, do we both
Yeah.
know that I'm going to like leave the venue and run around the block? And I hope they
But
do. And then sometimes they get really mad and they ask me never to come back. And, You know, I think that's probably the case with the last venue I played in Cincinnati, to be honest. But other
We'll
ones
fix
really
that.
like it. So
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
find
I
you a
hope
spot.
so.
Don't you worry about nothing. But
I do like that motor pub. Is that what it's called? I love that spot,
yeah,
man. They've
Motor's a
always
great
taken good
club.
care of me.
Yeah,
Yes, I
man.
love that place.
Well, it's odd. You can't spell it out for them because it's not premeditated. They should do the research as much as you should. If anyone should know, maybe the sound engineer should know that sometimes the microphone's going to be facing God knows what, and you might want to put a gate on it at some point. But like, other than that, there's not a lot to really say. You're going to feel
Right.
this thing out like the quarterback of a little bit of chaos that you are. It's, but in my mind, I have this visual of just like this partially dressed, very sweaty man coming down to this demeanor and being like, so what's the problem with climbing the sprinklers? Like I was
Right.
entertaining these lovely people, and
Right.
they can't see the correlation between the mania and the mindfulness that is you and yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying it like that. Yeah, it really is can be kind of an anomaly, I guess, or a dichotomy of sorts. It's like, yeah, this is I do simultaneously respect the venue very much and the people running it, and I care so much about it. And at the same time, I'm going to cause a little bit of chaos, and hopefully, I can make up for that by selling a lot at the bar and selling a lot of tickets and stuff. So
Yeah. Well, and if you're not prepared for chaos, I wouldn't recommend you open up a music venue at the end of the day. But how do you kind of come to
right.
terms with folks changing their mind about having you back? Because that's saying for me as an artist that it stings a little bit when someone says, no, we don't want you back. And it's like, well, I thought we had a good thing going on, you know?
Yeah, right. You know, hopefully, if a venue doesn't want to have me back, there's another venue in town that more aligns with what we've got going on. I've never felt like burnt by an entire city except for maybe Searcy, Arkansas. They did pretty much have me completely banned from their town for a while, but that just added to my bad boy culpability. I was like, yeah, I'm banned from here. Then all my fans in Cersei are like, yo, like we have to get you back. Like it almost made me like this like super villain of Arkansas, which was hilarious. But
Yeah.
yeah, I try to tip. I've never really gotten in a position aside from that where I can't like find somewhere else to play. And I've if I really did do something wrong, like I will apologize. And I got banned from a venue in Savannah, Georgia once, and I sent them the most earnest apology. And they were like, you know what? We talked it over and we actually think you're a good guy. We'd love to have you back. And then COVID happened and then they went out of business. So
Damn.
yeah.
As it
Oh
does.
well.
But,
Mhm.
you know, the willingness to accept that you're not everybody's cup of tea while still serving what you're serving is a really important part as growing as an artist. Like, do not compromise your show in its most genuine form because people are showing up for that and they're leaving right now for that. And you can't stop the people walking out the door.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's I mean, you see that I mean a lot of subgenres exist based off that entire premise. It's like, yeah, we like this kind of music because we know you don't like it, like more aggressive rock. I'm not saying it's completely reactionary, but there is a sense of like our inclusion is your exclusion. And in a more in the internet age, we are moving towards like a hyper niche, like no athlete will be I don't think will be as famous as the athletes of the past era. And at the same time, like because there's just more sports. People have more fans of. Same with music. Like no band will be as big as the Beatles ever again.
Yeah.
It's just not. There's just more. There's so much more to consume, and there's so much more to be a fan of. And so you do kind of want. And with the algorithm too, you can trust like, hey, if I'm exactly who I am, then that's the only way that'll make me actually unique. And then if I'm unique, then that's the thing that'll help me find my core audience. And you don't need a million fans anymore to like pay your bills and make the art you want to make. So that's ultimately like you really just need 1,000 or 100, whatever they say. Like you need the super fans who are going to buy your merch and support you.
Yeah. And open up a guest bedroom for you so you can actually sleep on something bigger than a couple couch cushions at some point.
Yes, that would be the promotion of a lifetime.
that I think you're spot on saying like the niche is alive and well. With the internet, you can have your biggest fans right in front of you at all points in time, and you can cater just to them. And I think it's more important than ever that people understand their value proposition. What do you give your listeners? So what can you ask in exchange for that to make sure that you don't have to fall by the wayside and take a hiatus because your van doesn't work, or you got to fix a window, or you got to go through some changes in bandmates and whatnot. It's like being able to express people what needs to fuel the fire is the greatest thing about where we're at now. That you don't need a label telling you why you're worth it and why you're not worth it and why we're dropping you today. It's a fan
Yeah,
of,
right.
did I have a good time tonight? Can I go home and stream it? Do I want to take a shirt with me? And maybe there's a tip jar just because I care enough to come see you come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's such a good point. I even forget that labels exist until you mentioned it. It's like, oh yeah, I forget that that's like was a huge part of this whole thing. Like, or still is. It's just crazy.
It's mainly country at this point, which is interesting to watch. It's like it seems like the music business, especially in Nashville, has turned almost genre specific in some ways, and that's
Right.
cool because there's
Yeah.
amazing things going on in that network, and I'm happy to see more artists be able to take off and whatnot. But when you are someone else's commodity to sell besides yourself, when you don't turn the profit that they expect, they don't care to sell you anymore. And if you signed away your freedom and independence, then you might be SOL.
Yeah, that's no joke. That's no joke. Yeah. That is a serious concern that I guess people would have if they were willing to enter that contractual relationship. That would be scary if I owed 5 records to the man. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, I had a musical divorce with a guy who tried to withhold some material of mine and kind of stifle me in a variety of ways. And I was like, man, even on a small level, this sucks a lot. And you think about what someone like Prince was willing to do to fulfill a contract and how that looks for artists moving forward. It's like if you read more deeply into your heroes, you can hopefully avoid the same mistakes that they made. But we all tend to need to learn from those experiences on our own rather than that of others.
Yeah, that's true. You got to get burnt a little bit yourself to truly learn it. And hopefully, like by building your career slow and steady, you can make some of those mistakes in a micro way that you can adjust, before you get into a cataclysmic situation that actually like hurts your career in a devastating, irrecoverable way.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very spot on for what I've seen you do, where it's just take rooms a day at a time, a fan at a time, a friend at a time. You forge these relationships honestly. You make your mistakes respectfully, and you burn places to the ground with a whole lot of love for the thing you do. So, with that, is there anything you'd like to promote as we conclude today?
Man, just whatever platform people use, I'm everywhere. So whether that's the type of social media, TikTok, whatever, Instagram, or streaming services, or buying a vinyl record, I'm pretty inclusively out there. So and I tour the whole U.S. So I will always, pretty soon, I will be at most within like a 4 hour radius of you if you live in the United States. At some point, you will have the opportunity to come see me play. So I'd love to keep in touch. I appreciate you, Matt, for having me and on your show. I love talking with you, man, and I definitely appreciate all the kind sentiments. I feel the same way about you, that you are like a hardworking and you're a good dude who makes good art. And I feel like I personally am always looking for people who are like hustling and making cool art. And you can tell across the U.S. It's like, oh yeah, this person, that person, and you're definitely one of those people who I'm like, this guy's got it. He's doing great stuff. And
Thanks, brother.
so my praises to you. So
Means a lot. Well, we'll get you back to Cincinnati sometime soon. But in the meantime, everybody, the one, the only Nordista Freeze. Thanks, Blair.
thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.